full 30-day process, public process for modifications that we will be making to our regulations, and those will be posted, we'll have public hearings, and we've got a goal to make any of those changes, so we can get them into place in the spring. I want to just introduce members of MassDOT that are here today. We have Registrar Erin Devaney. We have our Aeronautics Administrator, Jeff DiCarlo. And then we have, I'm Marie Green, Counsel and MassDOT and the MBTA. And we have also from the legal department, a group that's been working on this review. Neha Dupar, Tracy Clay is somewhere around. Jean, oh there he is, I'm sorry, down the end. Eileen Fenton and Jean Burke. So we're going to call your names, you can come up. If you decide later that you can sign in and want to speak, you can do that. We also have a laptop that's set up right outside the doors here. So if you prefer to make some written comments or you think of something later as you're listening, you want to make sure that you capture that, you're free to do that. We also will be accepting comments on our website. Correction on that, it's not our website, it's actually mass.gov/ANF/reg-review. There's a special place for inputting any comments you may have. We also have an email set up to accept comments. That's at state.mass.us. And if you need to get those afterwards, just come and see one of us. We'll print it out. So why don't we get started? The first name that we have is Stephen Miller. If you could just come forward and use the microphone here.
Hi, my name is Stephen Miller. I'm on the board of Littleton Streets Alliance and part of the Public Council on the state's pedestrian and bicycle advisory board. And I have a couple of thoughts about regulatory operation. Sometimes the distinction between the two is a little fuzzy. I might be pushing it, so I apologize if you think that. First is a thought about expanding the consulting pool. The state has come up with a whole bunch of new visions of how we are dealing with our transportation system in a more multimodal way. However, most of the contractors who we are using now are the ones we've been using for many years in the past. Some of them have been running fast to hire some new people who understand some of this stuff, but they still end up at the prime. It'd be nice to revisit the master contracting regulations to open it up again so that we can get some new companies that are built around multimodal transportation as primes and leaders on some of the new projects. I think this is particularly true on the interrelation of rail, T, and roads and access to it. Might need some new stuff there. The second is we have a lot of wonderful goals around greenhouse gas emissions, efficiency, economic development, but in fact most of the forms we have for evaluating new projects within MassDOT, starting with the project need form, basically are built around the idea of moving, being on schedule and within budget. Not that this is irrelevant, as we know, but what's measured counts. It would be good to expand the project need form and also the requirement of consultants who we hire to do analyses of various projects in various modes so that they start thinking about or have to come up with numbers which turn out to be very hard to find out unless it's done in the beginning. For example, percentage of the total budget is going to be used for sidewalks or cycling facilities or transit facilities within a project. He's actually, having that number helps in federal reimbursements. We don't have those numbers without enormous work. Asking the early stage designers to think about things like the percentage of the distance that a project covers. That'll include, and this is particularly true for roads, better than minimal standard pedestrian, bike, or bus treatments. For example, sidewalks wider than 4 feet, bikes given a protected lane of some kind, or an off-road facility, or buses given signal priority in special stop pullover areas. How about the percentage or number of intersections given higher level safety treatments, maybe protected bike lanes, maybe bulb outs. there's a whole variety of things. How do we go past the standard, the norm? Third idea is, right now, most projects are done by the MassDOT districts. Biggest ones are handled centrally, but most of the road work and facilities are done on the district level. What happens is the districts tend to do what they think is a good job and then send it upstairs to the state central for review of whether it's really complying with some of the new greenhouse laws, the bicycle, pedestrian, the complete street rules. And then it gets pushed back down again. I think we have to push responsibility and initiative down to the district levels better. We need to create a walking, cycling, and transit advisory committee in every district, not just at the state level, but on the district levels, including somebody from the senior citizens group, somebody from public health, somebody from an environmental group, somebody from bicycle or pedestrian groups, if there are those as well. They wouldn't have veto power, but they'd have the right to look at any suggested proposals and give suggestions before it becomes expensive afterwards to come back and redo something that's already first done. It'd actually be great, once these advisory committees were set up, to then do a central consulting contract to do training for them on how to be an effective advisory group, what are the new standards, make them powerful advocates for what the state administration is trying to accomplish on the local level. Next piece would be about changing the concept of maintenance. This is again on roads, but it's also true for some of the T and bus lines. The vast majority of money in transportation does not go to new projects, it goes to maintenance. Unfortunately, most of what we do with maintenance is put it back the way it was before. It turns out that maintenance is an enormous opportunity to transform what we've got, to move things small but important steps forward. So, for example, anytime, again, I'll use a road, that it's being repaved, that's considered maintenance. Typically, what they'll do is just restripe it and put it back the way they used to be. Serious work is when you move the curbs, when you dig the whole thing up, repave the whole thing, but just putting new paving is usually just called maintenance. That is an opportunity to rethink where the bus stop goes, where the crosswalks go, where the bike lanes are. Do you move the parking out to create a protected bike lane? There's a whole lot of opportunities that happen in maintenance, and I think we need to find regulatory and operational ways to make better use of where the big majority of our money is going. Lastly, and this is probably pushing it a little bit, I think at this point we have to acknowledge that congestion is here to stay. I know that's a hard thing politically to say, but I look at the Big Dig, I look at projects all across the state. The Big Dig tunnel really works, and now you stop as soon as you get out of it. What we do these days is we fix what we think is a congested hotspot, and what we've basically done is move the congestion to the next traffic light, or the next curve, or the next thing. Somebody who goes up and down the Southeast Expressway a lot, I'm quite aware of that problem. I think at this point, what we really need to do is think about constricting our investment regulations towards safety, but also for improving the multimodal capabilities of our state. People are driving fewer miles per person, but we have more people. Our population is going up, and the way our land use is set up, it is inevitable, like drops of water falling in the hills, that they congregate in streams and then rivers, and all you need is a rock in that river and you've got rapids. That's congestion. Every time we have a bridge, every time we have a curve, every time we have a stoplight or an intersection, we've got a rock in the road. And I think we're going to have to start thinking about how do we relieve that pressure by targeting our investment, honestly, to say safety, and it's helping increase our mobility by investing in these alternatives. Thanks a lot. I have two written pieces that will vote.
Great, thank you,
Thank you.
Stephen. Paula Lofgren?
thank you. Paula Lofgren, Chatham, Massachusetts. Tandem skydiving is a high-risk, extreme adventure sport industry which is growing by leaps and bounds in Massachusetts. As you review the existing parachuting regulations, 702 CMR 4.15 and 4.16, I have 3 requests and 1 question. My first request is that you keep the regulations that we now have. They are there for the protection of the public, both the tandem customers and the residents who live underneath the drop zone. 2, that you enforce the existing regulations. Currently, I know of violations that have not been cited, and there exist no written waivers to these regulations. Waivers have not been issued. And 3, I would ask you to look to enhance and strengthen our state regulations around the parachuting industry, and including tandem skydiving operations, for the following 2 reasons. Number 1, the FAA currently has FARs, Federal Aviation Regulations, only for solo jumping. FAA guidance on tandem operations is only advisory and not regulatory. And secondly, the industry organization to which the FAA and Mass DOT defer to has only voluntary recommendations, but also no regulatory authority. In addition, this organization actively opposes state and federal initiatives across the country to increase regulatory safeguards for the public. My third question may have been answered, and it was about what happens with the proceedings. Is when you meet to review 702 CMR, who will be part of the conversation? Will the public be allowed to participate in or observe these proceedings? Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Edward Shinnick?
I'll reserve my comments right now and just here to listen.
Okay, great, thank you. Mike Stanley?
Hi, Mike Stanley from TransitX. There is, if you're not familiar with, there's a $50 million grant that the U.S. Department of Transportation, Anthony Fox, has announced in early December. The proposals are due February 4th, and I'm working with a collection of universities, MIT, Harvard, Boston University, as well as cities, Belmont, Watertown, Cambridge, and potentially Somerville, in doing a proposal. This proposal will address a number of the key issues that Mass DOT has at stake in. 1, safety, which is your stated top goal. 2, congestion. And 3, greenhouse gas emissions. I'm here to tell you that congestion is a solvable problem, and it's not here to stay, and it can be eliminated. And the proposal that we have for the Mass DOT will show how we can do that. I'm also here to tell you that safety accidents and deaths from vehicular traffic can be eliminated or close to it. You can eliminate 99.9% of all your accidents, and you need to look at transit alternatives that do that, and this proposal, again, will show you how to do that. Other people have been sort of seeing the video, and I can kind of show you this is a little bit of an example of what we're going to be doing. We're proposing a pilot system along the MIT campus along the Grand Junction Railway. It's a elevated, ultra-lightweight personal pod system. It's direct point-to-point. So you're going nonstop from origin to destination, and you're avoiding the roads, and you have very small stations. So you have very frequent station stops, about 5 to 10 per mile, so much more frequent than even bus stops. And this gives you the convenience of a car, and so it can eliminate a lot of the use of cars, buses, trains, and also does package delivery and cargo for eliminating trucks from our roads. So if we want to go beyond traffic, we have to think beyond roads. That's what we can do to solve our transportation problem and deal with safety. These are also carbon-free, so they're solar power carbon-free. And if you look at Massachusetts, 38% of our greenhouse gases are related to our transportation system. And our transportation system is more than 99% carbon-based. Now, the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2008 mandates that every project and every group in Massachusetts needs to think about carbon emissions when they are thinking about projects. If that's the case, then it means that every project we think about should be looking at a carbon-free transit solution. So that's what I say. It's like I'm here with solutions, and I also say these are also privately funded. There is no public funding for this. It will be funded with, so it is the fair ratio is actually a fair multiple, so it's profitable. So that's why it's going to be privately funded without use of tax dollars. What it will require, though, is simplifying the regulations for dealing with rights-of-way. Now, most municipalities have their own rights-of-way along the sidewalks. But, for example, if we want to go down a 2-foot wide median strip to create that system down a median strip, that would require regulations for the unused aerial rights-of-way. If I want to go down highways, then we have a solution that would essentially allow us to do not only local, but also a regional mass transit system that could bring us to high-speed areas that we can go along the highways and go along the existing, without changing the existing configuration of both highways and bridges, would allow us to install this system along the unused rights-of-way, along highways, going underneath bridges, and not only be able to connect communities. So, for example, going from Boston Logan Airport to any of the 3 regional airports in Manchester, in Worcester, or in Providence would be a 25-mile direct trip, which would also service all the intervening communities along those routes of I-93 North, I-90 West, and I-93 South. This is a big deal, okay? And that's why, you know, I hope we're going to be one of the 5 finalists for this Mass DOT Challenge, because it's the only thing I've seen that effectively tries to, every issue that you're going to be addressed with here today, I would say is probably related to that, this system in some way. And I've been talking, and so the interest I've gotten from the top universities, from the MIT Media Lab and UMass Boston, it's real. We're creating a full operational scale model. So there's a 1/12 scale model, fully operational. We're going to start safety certification for the scale model because each of the pods are independently powered. The guideway is not powered at all. And so it will be fully operational scale model before we can actually do the pilot project. And hopefully the $50 million is enough to get a safety certified test system. Because municipalities can't take the risk of doing anything new. That's why we're looking at the grant to establish that a safety certified test system that can then municipalities can say, okay, great, you have a safety certified test system, now we can use bonds and green bonds and infrastructure bonds to pay for these systems. And we can have a radical transformation of our transit system in a very short order. I'm talking about for example, for the Green Line extension. Cancel the Green Line extension, put in the Somerville Loop. You're going to save $3 billion, and it's going to provide much higher levels of service for everyone in Somerville. Connect North Station to South Station, so there's 90 seconds going from North Station to South Station guaranteed. Have this go on the Seaport District and eliminate all the private bus routes that you need around the Seaport District. Eliminate the congestion around the Alewife Loop. Eliminate the congestion between Harvard Square and Watertown. Provide service along where all the major bus routes. I was talking to Belmont, and we could eliminate all the 90% of the car use in Belmont by having an ultra convenient access point like this. So there's lots here. There's lots more that I'm not telling to because it's just a short time to be respectful. But I will leave a few of these that are, you pass those around, I kind of give a description of what it is. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Nancy Timmerman?
I didn't have any comments.
Okay, thanks. Don Carlson?
Well, good afternoon. I'm chair of the Public Safety Committee of the Neighborhood Association of the Back Bay. I'd like to thank you for giving us the time to speak today. I'm going to talk about streets in the Back Bay, but our issues, fundamentally concerning safety, apply across the city and across the state. Our committee holds a public safety forum every month, attended by members of the community, representatives of the Boston Police Department, and as certain issues come up, representatives from other agencies, most recently the Boston Transportation Department. Our neighbors have come to these forums time and time again to tell us that we have a serious public safety problem in the Back Bay. due largely to drivers using Beacon Street and Commonwealth Avenue as speedways, blowing through red lights and ignoring pedestrians in making legal and illegal turns at numerous intersections. A year and a half ago, in June of 2014, 2 pedestrians were killed on Beacon Street in a crash caused by a speeding driver. Shortly after that, another pedestrian was killed by another speeding car also on Beacon Street, almost on the same block. Since then, we've been working with the Boston Police Department on enforcement and with the Boston Transportation Department on traffic signal timing and signage. Each of those agencies have done a pretty good job based on what they can do to solve our problem. But we come up against state regulations and even the attitudes of state officials when we try to reduce the speed limits and put up more speed limit signs. I can't find chapter and verse on the internet on exactly what the obstructions are, but here's what I understand. On reducing the speed limits, State Representative Jay Livingstone introduced a bill last year to reduce the speed limits on certain residential streets from 30 to 25 miles an hour. But I understand such bills have been filed and refiled and refiled for years and have not gone anywhere. I understand Mass DOT has opposed those bills. But even if Representative Livingstone's bill were passed, it would not apply to Beacon Street, the most problematic of our streets. That is somehow because of the width of the street, it's a very wide street, or because it is classified as an arterial street. So I ask you, why is the city blocked from setting the speed limit for its own residential streets? I'll ask you another question too. The speed limit on ComEd is 30 miles an hour, which is really too fast for pedestrian safety, which you can see if you're driving. That speed limit is shown to inbound drivers with one single sign at Charles Gate West, entering the Back Bay, and nowhere else along the several remaining blocks of ComEd, which are entered by drivers off Mass Ave and other streets who don't see this single speed limit sign at Charles Gate West. So, many drivers on ComEd know the speed limit only if they're cognizant of the general rules about speed limits on each class of streets in the city. And how many drivers know that? On the outbound side, there's a speed limit sign at Arlington Street and ComEd, and nowhere else along the next several blocks. I understand state regulations prevent posting more of these speed limit signs along ComEd and on Beacon Street. Why is that? For decades, public transportation officials seem to me to have been single-mindedly focused on serving drivers, moving traffic along as quickly as possible. To be sure, safety has not been ignored, but the balance between serving drivers versus serving pedestrians is way out of whack. There needs to be a rebalancing. Reducing certain speed limits would be a big step in the right direction. I hope the state will consider removing the obstacles that prevent the city from protecting its pedestrians. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane Wilson?
Hi, my name is Jane Wilson. I'm a resident of Chatham, Massachusetts. My issue again seems to relate to safety and congestion. And my questions relate to skydiving over and into congested areas. The FAA states that, quote, they restrict skydiving over or into congested areas, end quote. However, the FAA has not defined what a congested area means. My first question is, what is Mass DOT's position on defining a congested area in the air and on the ground? And number two, for the protection of customers, residents, flyers, what can Mass DOT do to protect tandem skydivers and residents living in congested areas on the ground? Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Wilson?
Hi, I'm Tom Wilson. I also am from Chatham, Mass, and I also want to talk about 702 CMR 4.16, which relates to parachute activities and skydiving activities. I'd like to get specific for a moment. In 4.16, the current regulations on parachute jump centers, under B, number 1, the area used as a drop zone shall be unobstructed and with a distance of at least 150 yards from the target to the nearest obstruction or hazard. My fear is that that's an inadequate distance, and it's difficult to determine that looking at what happens in the United States, because the industry organization in the United States is a volunteer membership organization which has no regulatory authority over any parachute jump center operator or operation or any person. So following their guidelines, which aren't really regulations at all, is voluntary. So I've looked outside the U.S. to see what other countries might do, and other countries have a parachute landing area with a diameter of 500 meters, or that would be 546 yards. That would be the British Parachute Association. So whereas Mass DOT has set a distance from a hazard of 150 yards, this other country has 546 yards. They also have that the parachute landing area is bordered on 3 sides by an overshoot area. And what they define as an overshoot area is an area that's free of major hazards, like buildings, hangars, power lines, things like that. Mass DOT regulations do not specify any overshoot areas to surround a parachute landing area. So my request is that Mass look at other countries' definitions for parachute landing areas. Because as you look at even insurance that is offered in this country to people who want to skydive and protect themselves from injuring third parties or the property of third parties, because the regulations in this country are so vague and undefined, they can get $50,000 to $100,000 in insurance to cover if they, as a skydiver, injure somebody on the ground or injure property. Over in Britain, they get the equivalent of $7.5 million US for the same kind of liability policy. And that's because the rules are a lot clearer and more specific there. The second area I'd like to look at is number 3 under 4.16B. It says a method of determining wind driven must be used which shall satisfy the commission. There's nothing specific there. There's nothing about how fast the wind is blowing, whether it's safe to skydive in that kind of wind condition. Other countries, well, here we have a voluntary 14 mile an hour for a solo student, that they shouldn't jump if the wind is 14 miles an hour or higher. But for an experienced skydiver, who would also be a tandem skydive instructor, our industry organization says that wind conditions are, that they can jump in unlimited wind conditions. There is absolutely no restriction. And to me, that doesn't seem like protecting a customer who wants to go on a thrilling, once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience. I think there should be a defined wind limit under which, or over which, tandem skydiving is suspended. In fact, in Britain, if they get 2 gusts above 20 knots, they suspend skydiving automatically for 30 minutes. And it won't resume until there has been those 30 minutes with no more gusts over 20 knots. We have no guidelines here. The third thing would be flotation devices. In 4.15, parachute and parachute jumps of Mass DOT regulations, under number 4, jump near water, it says no person shall make a non-emergency parachute jump from any aircraft within 1 mile horizontally from any pond, lake, river, or ocean, unless the jumper wears an adequate flotation device. To the best of my knowledge, this regulation is never enforced. There was a parachute jump center that operated in Chatham at our airport for a number of years. And to the best of my knowledge, no jumper ever wore a flotation device. Imagine landing in water with somebody strapped to your back and a parachute over your head and trying to survive that. I think while this regulation is on the books, it needs to be enforced. And at the airport in Chatham, there are lakes well much closer than 1 mile to the airport and the parachute landing area. So I want to make sure that I'm able to get involved in the review of the aeronautics for parachuting. And I hope that by signing up at the website, I will receive notices to do that. Thanks for your time today.
Cynthia O'Connell? Oh, sorry. Robert Latremolay?
Excellent. Unusual. Thank you. My name is Robert Latremolay. I have 40 years' experience in environmental and transportation work. As part of my environmental activities, I've written more of the Cambridge zoning ordinance than anybody else not employed by the city of Cambridge. As part of my transportation activities, I've been 2 years in actual railroad management. I've worked on the Red Line, I've worked on the Urban Ring, on keeping an eye on the mass bike arrangements. For the last 16 years, I've been chair of Friends of the Waikees, which is concerned with the environment of the Charles River, particularly in defending the Charles River against outrages of the City of Cambridge and the Department of Conservation and Recreation. MassDOT's responsibilities on the Charles River have been greatly expanded by the legislature in recent years. I think the legislature should go further. A few good examples. I've seen MassDOT stand up to very bad initiatives from Cambridge, from the DCR, and from people who support them. One of them, for example, is the Grand Junction. Cambridge was doing all sorts of lovely maneuvering, and MassDOT looked at the Grand Junction and studied the people who would use it and found the use of the Grand Junction was of no value to anybody except for the Kendall Square people. MassDOT is expanding open space on the Charles River and the Boston side. This waves flags to me because the changes that the legislature achieved were to take responsibilities away from the DCR because the DCR's very bad record and transfer those responsibilities to MassDOT. In particular, you've taken over the bridges. In the mass bike reorganization, open space is being created. On the Boston side, DCR is in the process of destroying 250 or more healthy trees between the BU Bridge and the Longfell Bridge. In discussing this matter with their legislative liaison, he proudly told me they're destroying Norway maples. Talking with your representatives in the Alston work, I saw one question raised to him on what he is going to do in the open space, and he wants to build nothing but Norway maples. I'm looking at the destruction. I've got the plans and the streets marked. There's a magnificent willow There are excellent cherry trees, any number of other varieties of trees. And Mass Department of Conservation and Recreation's explanation is changes with whoever they're talking to. They just want to destroy. They've been involved with heartless animal abuse in Magazine Beach. We've got an annual infestation on the Charles River of algae because Mass DCR loves dumping poisons on the banks of the Charles River. The poisons didn't work at Eversole Fields. So they put on stuff which said, do not use new water. The next day, the Charles River was dead from the harbor to the Massachusetts Bridge, and it recurs every year. I'm seeing people with MassDOT whom I trust. I am seeing people with MassDOT standing up to maneuvers related to the Cambridge and to DCR. They're standing up to attempts to expand that project into Cambridge with related destruction. I've given 2 extended analyses on this to that committee and to the governor. And I imagine you must have an address, which I'll follow it up to you. But I really think that MassDOT should be given the Boston side of the Charles River from View Bridge out. Matter of fact, I've seen the Boston Conservation Commission express great shock at destructiveness of DCR representatives in that area in the past. And on the Cambridge side, before they destroy all those excellent trees, I think that MassDOT should be given from the Longfellow Bridge to the Western Avenue Bridge. Thank you.
So we have a number of other people that signed up, but I don't see anyone else who indicated they wanted to speak. If there is anybody else here who wanted to speak, please come forward and just state your name. Okay. We will, oh, please.
My name is Roberta Cameron, and I didn't come with a prepared comments, but there were a couple of things that came to me as I've been listening to the comments so far. First of all, I think that access to public transportation and safe pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure is critical for the business community in Massachusetts for commercial growth, because there's an absolute constraint on the number of vehicles that can move around in Boston and Cambridge and our major job centers. And in order to be able to attract and maintain a workforce, given today's demographics, to be able to bring people who can get to work and work in our businesses and allow them to grow, we need to be able to get them there. And I think there's a growing preference for having a range of transportation alternatives that enables that to happen, and also that enables us to broaden the range in which people can live and get to work. So having more transportation alternatives that serve the suburban communities, both close in as well as farther out from the job centers, is going to enable us to attract a workforce that's going to sustain our businesses in Massachusetts. And secondly, I hear and I echo the need for more public input from communities that are impacted by regulations of local roadways, where businesses and residents who experience the impact of speed limits and turn restrictions and so forth on their local roadways, because they're also state routes, they need to be able to have some input and have a clearer path for how they can work with MassDOT to have appropriate regulation of those roadways so that they work in the communities, enable circulation within downtowns and within neighborhoods, so that they can be healthy communities. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roberta. Anybody else? Just to reiterate, we do have an email address if there are other comments you want to submit for our consideration. It's regreform@state.ma.us. So that's reform, one word, @state.ma.us. You can also go to the MassGov website, go to the ANF page, and there's a reg review place there to submit comments on. And that is an opportunity to submit comments on all Commonwealth regulations, not just MassDOT. We have 2 more listening sessions set up, as we stated at the beginning, January 19th and February 1st. And then we will be providing public notice of a hearing process, and we'll be accepting public comments on particular, very specific regulation changes that we're contemplating. I think that's it. Okay, we'll be here for a few minutes if anyone wants to approach someone individually. Otherwise, thank you very much for your interest and for coming out today. We appreciate it. Hearing our concerns. As you go forward, sit in and
I thought that was my favorite about this. You know what I mean? And then you got that Because they work really hard at it.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, that's what I thought they, that's what people told me with startups.
Yeah.
It's worth it to work in a startup. I think it's really nice. You keep moving from startup to startup. Because I would think some people would get a startup idea, they stay with it.
yeah, but then you sell it. Then you sell it to something giant.
No offense to your husband, I'm
No,
sorry.
no.
It's just a weird idea that that's a whole
It is.
way
But
of the
in a way-
profession is working in startups.
But in a way,
Because who would want to do that?
you get involved with someone or an idea or an initiative, and it has like institutional weight.
For some people, I'm just one of those weird people who stay and,
But you work for
I'm
Molly.
yeah, a few. That's true.